All right. My name is Kelly Reardon Slater. I run the UAlbany Incubator and NSF I-Corps program. And I'm happy to have everyone here today so that we can talk about our February Lunch and Learn titled Storytelling for Startups. And when we decided on this topic, I knew right away who I wanted to bring in as a speaker because she's one of my favorite storytelling experts. So I'll introduce my friend and colleague, Jessica Fields. Jessica is focused on entrepreneurs throughout her career. She is helping them connect with customers to scale impact. She currently serves as the Associate Director for the NSF I-Corps Hub in New York region. And she is the New York City Regional Innovation Network, where she acts as the liaison between a network of city and state-funded incubators and early-stage venture capitalists, while also leading and managing the I-Corps programs regionally and nationally. Jessica is really passionate about women in entrepreneurship and increasing diversity across our startup ecosystem, which is much, much needed. She's an avid traveler, having traveled to many, many countries, and enjoys the art of storytelling. So I'm really pleased to introduce to you this afternoon, Jessica Fields.
Thanks so much, Kelly, for the warm intro. I think we're just trying to get my slides shared right now. I think it's disabled, but while we're doing that, I will just reiterate again, hello, my name is Jessica Fields. As Kelly mentioned, I am the Associate Director for the National Science Foundation's New York Innovation Core Hub. So while we are generally based down in NYC, the reality is we're based all across the greater New York region. I've been working with startups across all of New York as well as across the country for a little over a decade now. In that time, I have seen probably several thousand pitch decks. I'm getting old enough now, it might be closer to the tens of thousands. So I've seen a fair few. I think some of them have been good. Some of them have been a little bit of work to get through, but the best ones, quite frankly, the best ones are the pitches that understand a pitch is really more of a story. That's what it is. It's a storytelling exercise, and they're capable of engaging their audience so much better. And so that's actually why we're focusing on storytelling for startup founders and not just pitching for startup founders. These are going to be some of the golden nuggets that will help you build some of the best decks you've ever made. With that, I think let's go ahead and dive right in. Just want to make sure I can see all of you all and all of the chat. I will warn you right now, I am a pretty interactive instructor because I want to make certain that this is valuable for your time. So I am going to ask you to jump in, drop things in the chat, maybe even unmute, shout it out at me. That's totally fine. We're going to kick it off right now. Who can tell me what is the basic format of a story? Unmute, shout it out, drop it in the chat. Don't be shy. I don't know a lot of shy founders, to be frank. Start with a hook. Deborah, thank you. All right, that's good. What else?
Consistency.
Consistency. Okay. Yeah, what are some of the structural components we need? Easy question, I promise. A climax. Yep, that's a popular one. General format that most people will convey is you've got the beginning, the middle, of an end. Right? It's not hard. It's not scary, I promise. It's a singular arc for a story. The truth is, the best stories are not constructed this way. They use a different format. And that's the one that I'm going to talk to you about today. And I'm going to encourage you to utilize as you build decks, presentations, write grants, whatever. Moving forward, you can use this structure. So clean slate, let's start over. I think the timeline is a really important part of a story, but you want to think about it more like the backbone of the structure of your story. It is a mechanism that we can select to demonstrate the pace of the story to the audience. They know where we're going. They know about how long the trip is going to be. That's the use of a timeline. Ultimately, though, when we're talking about a pitch, we're talking about going from where we were, what's currently happening, but ideally where we're going. That's the best part of the pitch. We want to be moving people forward towards a new future, a new outlook. So we're going to select different moments that help demonstrate this is the route that's going to get us there. And in particular, probably the most important component of storytelling is in fact your audience. And it is the one I see startups leave out the most. Okay. You really need to know who you're talking to in order to get them to agree with you that they need to change their perspective, change their opinion, and join you in your conclusion of what the future is going to look like. Okay. So we need to know that audience so we can tailor those moments to them specifically. That's why we're going to use the last component that we're using throughout is the intentionality, really picking and choosing what we're doing so we are hitting the mark as we move forward. Now, I know I'm not the only expert in the room. I'm going to throw out a lot of tips and tricks, maybe one bonus or two at the end. But if you have tips and tricks for your colleagues as we're going through this, please drop them in the chat, share them out. I think it's best to build an amalgamation of the minds. Now, traditionally, when I give this presentation, it's at the end of the National I-Corps program. You can drop in the chat or show of hands who here's been through the National I-Corps program. Yeah, well, we got one or two. All right, good, Eric. So you all know that there's usually on the penultimate day a storytelling lecture. I would start with a timeline and walk forward when I gave that presentation. You all are a little further along than those teams now. So I'm actually going to give you how I do it. Okay. I flip this on its head. I start with the future of where we want to go and then work backwards. So that's what I'm going to ask you all to do today. Again, I want to make certain you've got a takeaway from this hour together. So if you haven't already, grab a pen, piece of paper, digital sticky note, what have you. I want you to all start writing down for your next presentation. I don't care if it's big or small. Next deck you've got coming up. What is your top goal for that presentation? What do you or your company need to get out of that experience? Give me one or two, just write them down real quick. I'll give you like 15 to 30 seconds. What is the top goal you need to get out of that next presentation? Is it cash? Is it recommendations? Building an audience? What do you need? When you're ready, you can drop it in the chat or you can unmute, shout it out. I will call on people, I'll warn you. Kelly's seen me doing it. What do we got? What are our goals for the next deck? All right, there we go, Eric. Excellent. Yes, funding and more funding. Okay, Eric has clear goals. Good. But let's be specific. How much funding? All right, I want you to edit that for yourself. Specificity helps here. Okay, who else? Be brave like Eric. What are the goals do we need? What? Bill, Erding, Michael, Ellen, what do we think? There we go. All right. Business plan advice. Good. All right. Again, get a little more specific with it. Where in the business do you need the advice? I think that'll be really helpful. Strategic collaborations. Good, Bill. Excellent. Yeah. Customers and funding. Okay. All right. So we're starting to pull out. These are our goals. Get specific with them. Specificity is your friend here. All right. We don't want to be too vague, which leads me to my next goal that you need to be considering. What do you want your audience to take away from your presentation? What do you need your audience to learn from your 90-second, 5-minute spiel, what have you? When you're ready, drop it in the chat. Buy into the idea. Deborah, I think that's good, but again, can we be more specific? Try again. One more. What do they need? What do you want them to take away? Importance of my product. The purchasing rate. Aisha, that's great. Yes, I think that is a good specific. You're exciting. Yeah. Always going to have. All right. So I think we're on the right track with that. Keep writing those down. But there's one more goal I want you all to consider. What are the top goals for your audience? This is the thing that I see startups leave out the most. And that's what we're actually going to take a second. I'm going to let you write some stuff down, but you don't have to share it in the chat yet. We'll get to it. We're going to talk more about your audience, but right now I really want you to think about what are the goals for the members of your audience. Bill, that's really good specificity in the chat there as well. I like that a lot. All right, so as you all are doing that, again, I think it's got to be critical that we incorporate the audience into the development of our story. And with that in mind, we got to know who the heck they are, right? That's really important to do a little pre-scouting to understand who is going to be in the room. With that in mind, I do have one little bet that I need your help settling, okay? You can take 1 second. Are we good? Thumbs up if you've got your goals written down for your audience. Excellent. Thank you, Eric. All right. Now, you can drop it in the chat. You can unmute or shout it out. Can you all tell me who these two gentlemen are? I can see you smiling. You know who they are, right? Unmute, shout it out. It's okay.
It's Back to the Future.
Back to
Doc.
the Future. Doc Brown and Marty. Yes. All right, good. I'm speaking to the right people. Now, who are they? Any ideas? No? Anybody in the chat? Going once? Going twice? These two incredible women are the ones that received the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for CRISPR. All right, that's Doudna and Charpentier. And I'm pointing out these two groups because a lot of the times what I see is startups will either create a deck exclusively for investors or for people that are exclusively within their discipline, or they try and make a deck that is way too general and way too vague. All right, now everybody might know Doc and Marty, but some of the people in the room know who these two incredible women are as well, right? You need to figure out how to build a deck that balances the specificity of, let's say, the investors or the people from your discipline who might be in the room, as well as one that maintains the engagement of a more generalized audience. So with that in mind, you got to be critical and do the homework about who is going to be in the room. What are their potential backgrounds? What are their potential interests? What are their goals? So to give you an idea of what I would do, I actually create an archetype for the different types of folks I think will probably be in the audience that I'm going to be speaking to. Those are some of the things I'm looking at. What are their focus? What is their background? What is their interest in this topic? What are their goals, right? Got to think about, especially if you are planning a pitch to get funding, what is the goal for the investor? Put yourselves in their shoes. What is their experience that they need to achieve? So for example, a lot of them, let's say a VC, they are not just investing their money, they're investing someone else's money. So they need to find a company that's going to get a 10x return within a set amount of time. That's high pressure for them and for that company. So it's good to be aware of what goals they are, where they're at in their funding round. If you can, get that advanced knowledge as much as possible. So with that in mind, I want to encourage you all, you can take a screenshot of this if you want. Kelly, I will also send her the deck so you can have this later on. I think we're also recording, but build an archetype of the folks in your audience before you pull together any part of your deck. Really do that. Know what their goals are, know kind of some of the basic demographic information about them, what they have focused on in their career. Even if this is just a general audience, it's going to be mostly people in med tech, maybe mostly people from community social impact startups that have an interest in X, Y, or Z. Even that bare level amount of information will allow you to tailor the content to keep and maintain engagement with your audience, which is critical for storytelling. It is critical for a pitch. You want your audience to stay with you. That is probably the most important thing I can convey to you in this presentation. Keep your audience with you and make it easy for them to join you as you're going through your deck. All right. Now, there are different ways to create engagement. I've seen a lot of folks kind of take an initial assessment of the room, say, show of hands, how many people have a background in supporting somebody with dementia, or who has kids here. This is an easy way to help create investment in the presentation that you're providing while also giving you information about who's in the room so you can balance that information appropriately. Be careful with overusing the raise hand thing. I do see it happen a lot, but you can also say, throw out a question, have people drop an answer in the chat. That's kind of a more modern Zoom one. I think it's also really important to notice if you all get a little more nervous before a presentation, the audience wants you to do well. The audience wants you to have a good time. If you are having a good time giving that presentation, that energy gets conveyed to the audience, really helps you transport them to that final destination. So just keep that in mind as you're practicing and as you're presenting. Any questions on that? No. Okay. All right. Second bonus tip though, for our audience, it's important to remember your secondary audience. Now your secondary audience is, well, let me put it a different way. Your primary audience is anybody that can be in the room. Your secondary audience is anybody they could go talk to about your presentation after the fact. This is a really critical one for folks presenting, particularly at higher level events, because your performance resonates with people, whether it is good or bad. So you need to be mindful of that and carry that forward with how you perform. And this is a performance, quite frankly. To give you an example, I had an incredible team. They did a fantastic job through the National I-Corps program. The lead of the team was a rather young undergraduate student. He did a phenomenal job right up until the end when he used Apple Bottom Jeans as the background music for his video in front of the National Science Foundation. He will forever be the team that played Apple Bottom Jeans in front of an NSF program officer. It was not the right impression to make. So please do consider your secondary audience. All right, it's an important one. I want you to have a good reputation as you move forward. So you have to be thinking about them in advance. Now, I think this is my favorite part, is the moments that we pull them all together. Now, a lot of you have been up and running for a couple of years. Some of you have over 100 interviews with customers. That's a lot of data points. That's a lot of moments that you can pull from to craft your story. So it's really important. You have to filter. You have to sort them. You have to contextualize them for your audience. But they are also one of the best routes to engage your audience. So we really need to think about what are the stories they'll always remember. We call those star moments. Which ones are going to stand out, stick in folks' brains? Hopefully not like the Apple Bottom Jeans. Better examples. What I would encourage you to think about, and this is what I'm going to ask you to jot down here real quick. Think about any kind of massive aha or breakthrough moments. What got you involved in this discipline or this focus area in the first place? Was it a story of a particular person? Right. A lot of this is going to come back to the people who are involved, whether that's in the business model or in the customer segment that you are supporting. What did you learn? What is the team still struggling with? I think that honesty is important. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but really highlighting any critical obstacles as well. Take a second, jot down what are some of these sort of top poignant moments involved in your startup journey, the journey of your customers. Give me a thumbs up when you're good. We're going to flesh this out. Yeah, somewhere between 1 and 3 of those, depending on how fast you write. Probably about 5, 10 more seconds. Okay, don't have to share those yet. We're going to get around to it. But there's some other things I want you to flesh out about those critical moments first. What was the status quo around one of those top moments? So just pick one. We're going to build some context around it. All right. What was the status quo that created that situation? Real quick, just jot it down. Also, real quick, what methods have been tried to deal with this problem? I can tell you right now from an investor's perspective, if you try and tell them that there is no competition, nobody's ever tried to solve this, they are going to assume you are full of bull. There is always some method that somebody has tried to deal with a situation. So what is it? Right, it's going to lend to our authenticity. We understand that. And that's a critical component of storytelling. We got to figure out how to be authentic here. And why did that solution not work? Write that down. Okay. I'm going to keep going unless somebody thumbs up, thumbs down. Pretty good? Okay, Eric's giving me a no. All right, next thing I want you all to consider. How did it make you feel? All right, this is actually pretty important. People don't realize that. How did you feel when you first learned about this or when you first experienced this? I also want you to write down, looking back now, how does it make you feel? And it's important to understand the feelings around that moment because that's part of what you're going to inspire in your audience. So you're going to be managing their feelings while you're presenting. You're holding that room. So important to know what you're going to put them through. All right.
Jessica, can you clarify what you mean by that? How did you feel when these moments happened? What do you mean,
Yeah.
the stories, those key star moments? Is that what you're talking about?
Yep. Yeah. Pick one star moment and kind of just jot down real quick. How did you feel when that happened? So for example, I had a team that was building a drone to help in an emergency response situation, but their foray into that was that their own family had experienced a landslide in South America, right? And that was just a devastating shock for them. It was very frustrating. They were so far away. There's a lot of emotions around that. And I think it's important for you to understand what those are, and because you're going to be kind of creating those in your audience as well. Once you have those jot down, really important, and this is one of the most important ones. How did this moment, this experience, or that feeling affect your business model? Did it inspire you to do something? Did you realize you had to pivot, a big pivot? It probably had an impact on your business model. What was it? All right. Take a breather for a sec. We're going to do something a little more fun. We're going to take those moments and we're going to think about how do we actually convey them in two-dimensional slides. Right? So some pro tips that I want to encourage you to utilize are visuals, quotes, and preferably also some of your personality. So as an example, this is a particular shot from a tornado coming through and devastating a town. I'm originally from the Midwest, Tornado Alley. So this is an experience I can really identify with. It's important to understand if you are maybe pitching to a group that has that experience, they will understand this. They will identify it. It's also providing your personal connection, which can be a really important component to pull into the early part of your presentation somewhere so that they understand why you're the one giving this conversation, right? You need to identify what your background is, your expertise somewhere here early on. Additionally, with visuals, I really like this one. This was a team I was working with as they were developing a product for perimenopause. They just went all over the place to talk to women. You can see from this visual the different locations they went to, the different customers that they are targeting, that they went to several places. So this is kind of a multitude-wide issue. A bonus tip that I really like and I utilize a lot from these slides is kind of twofold. One, use a verb in the title of your slides. Don't just do agenda. Don't just do problem, solution. Really think about your opportunity to contextualize what that slide means within the story, within the journey that you are conveying. big apple, but no big insights. Like it's very clear the slide can stand alone. Even if no one was talking, you would understand what the takeaway is. The second tip I would give you is 6 by 6. So this is a rule I use a lot. Means you shouldn't have more than 6 words across the top of your slide, and you probably shouldn't have more than 6 bullet points down. That's about how much information it's easy for the reader to quickly intake. All right, this is another one actually from the same team. Utilizing your quotes, especially if you have been doing customer discovery. And I know Kelly and Maria are also very big advocates of customer discovery here. Utilize the quotes that you have been gathering from that experience. That is first person data, especially if you can demonstrate approximately how many of the customer segments you've been hearing this from. That is great contextualization of the validation that you have for your market and your potential. It's really good for an investor to hear, or an audience to understand what's the extent of the traction. So utilize your quotes and think about the sample size as well with that. I think it's really one of the best tools in your pocket. And finally, I do want to recommend you can layer your personality over this. You can absolutely utilize a little bit of humor. I think that creates a fantastic engagement with the audience. A little bit of levity kind of gets you a long way with your audience. All right, any questions on any of that? Okay. Anybody else have any tips and tricks you want to throw out to the room? If you do, drop them in the chat. All right, this is really the bulk of the exercise I want you all to work on. I think you can use this as a takeaway as you move forward, but you're going to select one of those moments, preferably the one you've been building at around. And I want you to try to explain it in one sentence, in simple terms. What was the problem and really who was experiencing it? And you can do one additional sentence for each of these bullet points, but what was that status quo? What methods did they try? Why didn't they work? And how will your business change it? What differentiates you? It's really important. What differentiates you from the status quo and the current methods that were tried? You take a second. You could jot down a couple of notes on each of these bullet points, but then I am going to ask at least 1 or 2 people to try this live. I know that's going to be tricky, but this is the best time to do it. Save space. So again, 1 sentence per each. Can you explain the situation in 1 sentence? Status quo, what they tried, why it didn't work, and what you're going to do about it. Why you're the one to do something about it. If you have bandwidth, add what else is needed to achieve that goal. We'll touch more on that later, but at least those first few. If you have any questions about that, just unmute, shout it out, drop it in the chat. Specificity is your friend here. We'll give you that tip. Okay. Who's going to be brave? Who wants to volunteer?
Let me give it a shot.
All right, let's do it, Eric.
A lot of people experience low back and neck pain and have to undergo surgery, but oftentimes the surgeries are not successful. Current surgeries are not successful because most implants are not designed appropriately to stimulate the response in the tissues in the spine to heal the way that allows pain to go away. A lot of companies have tried designing implants without understanding the environment in the spine, such as forces and pressures and loads and things like that. Based on our unique research, we understand better this mechanical environment in the spine, and we've designed implants that will optimize the tissue healing process so that pain will be eliminated and function will be restored better.
Okay,
This time we're looking to raise funding to develop, blah, 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 blah.
good. And on that aspect, I appreciate that. Eric, that was fantastic. Yes. I think you did a good job. You hit, yeah, we do round of applause like this a lot in I-Core on Zoom. That was great. You really focused in on pretty much one sentence per bullet point. I think you gave that whole pitch in pretty much under a minute, which is impressive. All right. I think we started to just borderline get a little technical there. I think you could pull it back just a little bit and add a little bit more, maybe quantification around the emotion or the pain point. But in general, that was a solid 30 to 60 seconds pitch. And that's exactly where everybody should be from this exercise, right? You should be able to convey quickly and efficiently what is the problem, why is it a problem, who is it affecting, and how are you going to change it? The best part in there was that Eric identified in basically one sentence how they were different and better at the same time. Okay, that's a great level of efficiency that we want to be at with our pitch and our story development. Okay, anybody else want to give it a go? Aisha, what do you think? I think I've also seen Deborah drop some stuff in the chat. Hurting.
Actually, I don't have that experience. I'm just a newbie to gather experience here. So I'm listening,
Okay.
actually.
Do you still have a moment that you were cataloging down?
Not really. I have some couple of ideas, but I haven't started stitching those yet.
That's all right. Let's dig into one idea. What drew you to that idea?
Okay, I was thinking of healthy eating habits because the students here work around, don't have a lot of time. So I was thinking of that. And the problem statement is that like people don't have time and the budget is also very much limited. So for them, either I can supply some kind of kits or the ready-made cooking, and probably that's not on one traditional, based on the different cultures. Like my focus is on the international students. So yes.
Nice. All right. So you've actually got a lot of the components there. We need to maybe restructure it a little bit. I think you could start off with that international component, really highlight what that problem statement is, the experience of an individual. I think that's something we see used a lot in pitches. Start with the person who's experiencing a problem. That's a great visualization to utilize. And then demonstrate why it's not working. There's time constraints, there's cost constraints, there's issues with it not really being what they would appreciate to be eating. And then you can talk about your solution and how you differentiate. So you want to flesh that part out a little bit more, but you're on the right track. I think you can keep at it. Okay. I want to keep pushing through here because I know we're short on time for Q&A. I want to make certain there's some time for that. Now, I think these sort of more emotional, engaging moments are critical, especially to the first half of your presentation. But as you all are moving more towards, let's say, non-dilutive or dilutive funding options, you're going to be talking to investors that want to see the math. They want to see the market pull. So with that in mind, we need to be intentional about some of these additional moments that showcase our data, our validation of the market. And so I really want to make certain you think critically about what to include with that. Again, come back to what are some of those goals for the folks in the room. One thing they might be looking for if you're a software is, what is your monthly return rate? They might be interested in seeing what is your marketing strategy? What is your financial goal plan? Have you considered some of the risks to the steps that you're outlining moving forward? What partners are you going to need? What methods have you taken to acquire those partners? So really think about what are some of those critical components that are going to be necessary to tell that story and convey enough information in a short amount of time to gain their interest. And that's actually one of the things I really want to encourage you all to consider You should have decks of different lengths, and I'll talk about that more later. But at minimum, you should have a 5-minute solid deck, a 30-second business thesis, which I think Kelly had them, you all did that last week or last time you all got together. Those are going to be 2 of the critical components that you should always have. Don't come to a 5-minute pitch with a 30-slide deck and expect to get through it all. Instead, make certain you've got just enough slides to get through that 5 minutes, convey with clarity and specificity what you're doing, who you're helping, how you're going to do it, and why you're the best ones to do it. And then put everything else in the appendix. Okay. If you get 50 minutes with investors, spend the first 5 giving your pitch and the next 45 doing Q&A. That is going to be a more efficient use of your time than trying to do a 30-minute pitch. You will lose their attention. Better to get them engaged with questions around the specific things that they are interested in. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. So some additional tips for kind of tailoring to those specific groups. Always be asking yourself as you're building out these decks. I really do encourage you, and I do this as I'm going through it. I will edit my deck based on what I think the point of that presentation is. Coming back to our first goal, what do we need to achieve? What specifically does the audience need to hear? What do I need them to understand? Like, I'm the best at this. Or this is a problem affecting 30 million people on a daily basis that we can solve, and we're the best ones to do it. And then what do you specifically want to say that helps them achieve their goals in particular? So a couple of things to be editing with in mind. One, what are the requirements for the pitch? Always hit the requirements for the pitch. If you do not incorporate all the slides that they've asked for, expect to be called out on it. You got to do this. Even if you throw them in the appendix, they got to be there. Make certain your slides are clear. Okay. Key example. Can anybody tell me what is the point of this slide? No? How about now? Make certain if you're going to use a slide with a lot of data, and I know a lot of academics do this. I've seen a lot of community teams, they just have a wall of text. You need to emphasize where you want your audience to draw their eye. Okay, so for example, with this slide, if you just have it like this, the key takeaway is not apparent. If I incorporate some component that draws the eye and makes it clear this is where I want you paying attention, it's much faster for them to get the message. I've seen other ways that folks kind of handle that. If you do need to put a lot of text in a slide, draw their eye to specifically where they need to be paying attention. Okay, the best way that I can explain your slides is that they should sort of be like a road sign on the highway. All right. As your audience is going down, they should be able to look at your slide, and then within about 2 seconds, they know the message and then get their eyes back on the road. For the record, you are the road, the presenter. You are the thing that they should be paying to the most. The slides are your support mechanism. Okay, they provide that additional color commentary, but really the focus should be on you. So make certain it's easy for them to quickly and efficiently catch the message from your slide. And lastly, this is more about your presenting style, but consider additional methods for how to engage that audience. So we've talked about visually already how to do that, but I really want to emphasize, particularly in Zoom, consider also your vocal capabilities, right? Your voice, whether it's low, high, quick, slow, that really changes the feel of the room, the emotional capture of the audience. So take advantage of those opportunities, especially if you are a nervous presenter. I really encourage you to plan pauses in your presentations. Those allow your audience to catch up with you, and it creates a little bit of a drama, a little bit of interest for them to move forward with you. All right. We've also talked about kind of how to build some of this emotional engagement, but again, if you're a nervous presenter, plan just like a small, easy, very simple joke that a lot of the room can resonate with. I think that pulls folks in very quickly. All right, the last thing that we're going to talk about really is kind of tying that bow on top, which is the timeline. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can measure time in a startup journey. I'm going to tell you some of the most memorable ones that I have seen used as, again, that backbone of the story that's demonstrating the pace to the audience. So one of my favorite presentations, decks, whatever you want to call it, was a story about how many coffee cups it took to get a deal. He had a chart that demonstrated over time. All right, that was the measurement of the progress of the presentation. Another one I've seen is how many doors were slammed in their face, how many people they were able to engage, how big this problem is on a daily basis, and how fast it's growing. The most typical thing that we see in a lot of presentations is somebody just does an agenda slide, right? Not unlike this one. It says these are the topics that we're going to cover. So it's really easy for the audience to understand this is how far we're going to go. You don't see that as much in a pitch, but another one I've seen used as just a kind of a visual cue is to have dashes along the bottom that measure the slides. And so they'll highlight it as they transition slides so the audience knows it's going to be about this long. Okay, there's different mechanisms that you can use for that, but the best storytellers, the best pitch artists, they will consider this timeline and they will kind of craft the story around that, and it creates a whole component, right? It's a whole product for the audience to enjoy. Those are the best stories. Another way to think about it is some of the best comedians put a button on the end of their, usually their stand-up routine. They start with a joke and then they bring the joke back at the end. You want that whole story feel. The timeline allows you to do that. So really be intentional about how you select that and measure that for your audience. Now, a couple additional tips for timeline. First and foremost, get to the point quickly. You need to capture their attention. As somebody pointed out, you need to have a hook within the first, let's say, 5 to 30 seconds of your presentation. Be efficient with that. Practice that, have that nailed down. Know whose time is being measured. So what I mean by that is you need to understand who is the protagonist in your story that you're going to tell. If it's going to be about you and how many coffee cups it took, how many meetings it can take in order to achieve this particular goal in your business, you're the one that's measuring the time. You're the one that's doing the pace. Maybe it's about your customer and how your customer is running out of time, being able to manage their crops in Africa, and there is a crunch on this. So we need to be able to move at this pace, at this rate through the story. You've got to pick who is the protagonist, who's that lead character, shape your timeline around that person and what they need to achieve. All right. So yeah, always come back to the goals concept. And I really wanted to kind of ensconce this one. Please feel free to take a screenshot of this for you all. These are basically the 8 most important slides that are requested on almost every single pitch deck. You should have several versions of these slides ready to go at all times. Bonus comments kind of on each of them real quick. Your cover slide, people think this is a throwaway slide. It's actually the slide that is most likely to be up longest while the A/B check is getting done. So make certain you've got a call out somewhere on there to the key individuals that you want to target with your presentation. So for example, if there are 20 decks getting presented that day, yours is the only one focused on the energy sector, maybe around batteries. Make certain you've got a comment on that in your tagline on that cover slide, okay? So those folks will perk up and pay attention for that one. Selling the problem, that's a large part of what we talked about. Who is being affected? How are you going to help? Really contextualize what the issues are. And then the solution is what you're coming in with, what differentiates you. And the traction validation is that data that supports you're going to have the best business model for this. Let's outline what that market is. What's the market size? What's its potential for growth? If you're presenting to VCs, please make certain if you can get a compound annual growth rate in there, a CAGR, and cite it. The business model, you know, a lot of you have gone through ICOR, you know what that is, but think about what critical components you need to emphasize that are complete, that are validated, and what else needs to be validated, what else needs to be ironed down. The team is not a throwaway slide. I see so many people throw away the slide. The team should be your opportunity to emphasize why you are the best group to do this, especially right now. Why is this your moment? Utilize that slide for this and have it tie off at the end with your ask. What do you need moving forward in order to achieve those goals and create that future that you were setting up from the beginning? Now, final tip on timeline. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. People are going to remember the first thing that they hear, anything that is repeated, and the last thing that they hear. So it's really good to embed these throughout your presentations. So for example, I've seen a lot of teams start with their business thesis and come back and end that business thesis, but tweak it to really emphasize how the help from that particular audience will help them achieve that goal. And with intent in mind, I do want to encourage you all to create next step slides. I think these are very beneficial for investors. It makes it very clear what your ask is and where you're going to need it. Especially if you have, let's say, a longer timeline, you may be a med tech or a biotech team, you might not have a lot of there yet, but you've done the research, you've done the market validation, you know you could get to this point. This is your opportunity to demonstrate that you've done that homework, you know what you're talking about, and you are a worthy investment. If you haven't done those things yet, at least talk about what your plan is to do those things. All right, that creates some demonstration for your accountability and your credibility, which is important to incorporate throughout the presentation, right? The other thing I think is intellectual honesty. We talked about this a little bit, but you got to own your gaps in your business model. You got to own that competitors have existed before you. If you want to reference that company I spoke about earlier that was creating a device for menopausal patients, their biggest competition is actually the refrigerator. Clients having hot flashes, just go and open the freezer, cool off, close the freezer, go home. All right, it's very low fidelity, but it works. So they didn't actually have a ton of market pull. It was a real difficulty. You got to own those things. All right, don't say you have all the answers when you don't. One of the best things that you could say is, I don't actually have that information yet, but this is our plan in order to figure it out, and we're absolutely open to any additional advice you have on that specific topic. Okay, own it, move it forward. Same with your business model. All right, now, I think we've got just a couple minutes left, so I want to round out with a few kind of strong tips for practicing. You got to practice. It will make a huge, huge difference to the execution and the results of your work. I always recommend nail your first 30 seconds. That first impression makes a very big difference. Kind of a $10,000 tip that I can give you that I use myself is doing a walk and talk. So especially as you're learning new slides, you don't have them memorized yet, but you kind of know the topics you want to discuss on each of them. So call your friend, grab your roommate, go for a walk and just talk it out, and then go over it again, and you will get faster and you will get more efficient at it over time. So strongly recommend that. Do a proper and full dress rehearsal. And what I mean by that is put on the shoes, put on the clothes that you're going to wear. Your posture makes a very big difference to your performance. So actually wearing the appropriate shoes is one of the best tips I can give you for when you're practicing, because it does affect your airflow, your shoulder structure, and therefore how you're presenting, how you're going to engage. Practice as you preach. Eye contact is a critical one, and it can be a difficult one for a lot of folks in the Zoom era. So what I would encourage you to do is make certain you have certain parts of your presentation memorized, so you can look directly into the camera and convey eye contact to your audience. All right, especially those first 30 seconds, have those memorized, have it nailed down. Record yourself and take notes on the playback. It is painful at first, but power through it. It is one of the best things that I can encourage you to do. I do it all the time. Practice with people who don't know what you're working on. You know, grab your cousin or the guy down the street at the shop. That's fine. Have them sit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, listen to your presentation. They'll help identify the things that are still a little confusing for the various types of audiences that you might be pitching to. Okay, so that variety in practice really makes a big difference to honing down your message so that it is understandable across the board. And breathe, especially for early presenters. Just take the first 2 seconds of your presentation, collect yourself, and breathe. And that allows your audience to sink in and pay attention to you as well. Incorporate those moments throughout your practice. Okay, final tips on exercises. These are ones I like to do with some of the teams that I've worked with in the past. Excitement versus hesitation. So if you're getting to do this in a group or with a couple of people, have them take a piece of paper, write excitement on one side, hesitation on the other. As you are going through your presentation, have them write down any moment that was exciting to them or any moment that was hesitating, a little difficult for them to understand. Do this exercise over and over again. And you will find over time, things will move more into excitement. You'll be able to refine down. So it's a really easy one to do with. For folks that you're really comfortable presenting in front of, have them do a speed up, slow down. So you just start talking, you just start going on a particular topic. They'll tell you when to speed up, as in you're giving too many details. They don't need this information. It's not relevant to the story. Speed up. Versus you get to a point where maybe they need more material, more background information, they'll say slow down, and you provide more of that background information. All right. That's really good. If you're not sure which moments to utilize, do that exercise with a friend or a colleague. And then finally, change up the time allotment, change up the target audience. We talked about that one a little bit, but time allotment, I want to emphasize here. You should absolutely have a 90-second version of your deck, a 3-minute version, and a 5-minute version. Sometimes you get lucky and it's a 10-minute as well. But if you've got the 90-second, 3-minute, and 5-minute, you will be able to fill out the other components. All right. Again, the appendix is your friend. You can always put additional information there, but we have teams do 90-second lightning pitches at a lot of our resource meetings. Most of the pitches that I see pre-pandemic were 5-minute decks. During the pandemic, they've shortened it down to a lot of times 3 minutes. So you want to make certain you have the room there and you know how to get all of those critical components that we talked about in your story within that time frame. Okay, so a minimum 90-second, 3-minute, and 5-minute deck. And then practice interruptions. VCs will absolutely interrupt you. If you have been through the National I-Corps program, you have an advanced start on this. For those of you who have not, I can tell you I've had alumni come back and they have told me VCs interrupted everyone who presented before them. They got off track, they fumbled, it was an uncomfortable situation. But this person, because they've been through I-Corps, they got used to people interrupting them and asking them questions that they weren't necessarily expecting, stayed on point. They kept their flow, they were able to achieve their goal. Okay, so it's all right to have maybe a 5-year-old mentality that you're giving an audience to, have them jump in and ask you why, what data, where's the source on this? Okay, practice with somebody interrupting you. It will make a big difference to how well you do in some of these larger scale arenas. All right, and finally, these are some additional resources that I highly recommend you check out. The Hero's Journey, according to Joseph Campbell, is a classic, and it walks you through sort of the basic story arcs that you need to be considering. What's the problem? What was the status quo? Why was it that way? Why were you the person to come in and fix it? And what's changed as a result? What's that new future look like as a consequence of this journey? Joanne Bainey is an artist. She is great. She does a lot of advising for some pretty high-level clientele. Check out her Guide to Interpersonal Communication, as well as the Guide to Presentations by Lynn Russell and Mary Munter. Additionally, I encourage you, go to meetup.com. There are probably some available on Facebook or social media near you as well, maybe even on your campus. They host pitch practice events. So you can just go and practice your pitch live. That's one of the best things that you can do. Just practice in front of all kinds of audiences. My final tip is a reminder that this is not a cookie. I know it's lunchtime, but I want this slide embedded in your brains because I cannot tell you the number of times I have seen decks that are only okay because all they do is tick the boxes of those critical slides that I showed you. Here's the problem. Here's the context. Here's the solution. Here's our market size. It's so boring. If you want to build a memorable pitch, you need to be more intentional with your ingredients, more intentional with how you pull together that story, and you will create something delicious and memorable and actually hitting what those investors want to hear from you. Basically, it's your business thesis, a lot of pictures. Okay. So with that in mind, I'm going to open it up for any questions that you all have, anything else I can help you with that wasn't covered in these slides. You can unmute, shout it out. And I'd say big thank you to Kelly and Maria and 518 for hosting me here. I really appreciate that.
Jessica, fantastic job. We do have a couple minutes left. If you do have questions. Erding has a question.
All right, Erding, how to identify the right person? Do you mean to pitch your idea to? I think if that's what you mean, I would encourage you to label out what industries you're really focusing in on. Again, kind of think about that archetype. Like, is there a particular location in the country? Are you on a particular industry, like let's say biotech in oncology is the focus? You can actually look up investors that focus directly on those particular areas. Additionally, you can look up usually your competitors and see who their sponsors or their investors have been, and start to kind of pull names from there. And then find out where they're going to look at teams and get in front of them. Being the non-business background, can you please tell me how I can do my market research? That's a great question, Aisha. And I'll be honest with you, you don't need to have a massive business background, right? Full disclosure, my background is psychology, anthropology, and entrepreneurship. The bulk of that was psychology and anthropology until I started to move to New York and work with startups. So you don't have to have that background. But that being said, there are two ways to do a market sizing. One is top down. This is the one I see teams do a lot. They just look up what is the compound annual growth rate that's recently listed for their particular industry, and they make it for the largest possible version of their market. I'm going to warn you right now, investors know that that is probably inaccurate data. More likely what you need to be doing is the bottom up model, which is where you're actually figuring out, okay, approximately how many customers exist within the niche group that I'm going to support first. What is their capability to pay on this? How much are they actually paying on this based on the price of my product? And then multiply those two numbers by roughly how many of those customers you think you'll be able to tap or capture within the first year. That's your target market size. Then you can scale up depending on that serviceable available market, which is usually region-based or total available market from there. Could do a whole nother presentation on that one, but that's kind of the rough way. Think of it top down, bottom up. Generally, a lot of people start top down, make certain you validate from the bottom up because that's what the investors are looking for, what that pull is.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I want to be conscious of our time and thank Jessica for her work today with us. And this is how we say thank you in I-Corps. So thank you, Jessica. We do try to close out our lunch and learn sessions with a 1-minute wellness check-in. So Nancy, I'm going to let you take it from here and just share a 1-minute wellness.
Hi, thank you again, Jessica. So like Kelly said, we do want to close out with a little mental wellness tip. And so our tip this month is to practice a little meditation. A meditation practice can be kind of hard to establish, especially if you're really busy. So we want to share this website. Kelly's going to drop the link. These are meditation minis. These are all audio meditations that are 10 minutes or less for different scenarios. They have one for flight anxiety. They have one for negative reactions. They have one for positive affirmations. So definitely check that out and utilize those. And meditation can really help manage your stress and also help to redirect any negative or distracting thoughts that you may be having. So we encourage you to try those. Kelly also just dropped into the chat a registration form for our March Lunch and Learn. This one is for people who are thinking about the future growth of their company in terms of space. Incubators are temporary homes for startups, and at some point you do need to go out there and get your own space. So that's what we'll be talking about in March, and it's going to be on site at the Capital Region's newest co-working warehouse in Latham at Launchbox. So the link is in there with some information, and we hope to see you next month.